What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on these videos. It really helps this channel a lot. And remember that new videos come out every Sunday, and you can always check out the playlist by clicking in the icon here, or you can click in the link in the description. So in this video, we're going to go over the different variations of pitching, and including some lie, how to use the bounce, and I'm going to demonstrate a few shots so you can see the different shots and how my swing changes a little bit to get the desired result. As we've discussed before, once you're off the putting green and the ball is anywhere else on the golf course, your shots and your part of your decision making depends on the lie. That has to be the first thing that you determine as you inspect your golf ball, is how it's sitting on the ground. And there are many different variations of this. I mean, it's essentially limitless, and you learn how to navigate the different lies essentially through practice and giving yourself those different lies. And we're just trying to predict how the ball is going to come out of that particular lie, whether it's sitting up in the grass, sitting down in the grass, on a nice lie, or if it's sitting down in a hole, or if there's something behind the ball or in front of the ball. All of these variables will have an impact on how the ball comes off of the club face and how the ball releases. And not only is the lie important, but also the condition of the surface. For instance, today it just rained earlier this morning, so the ground is kind of wet. So a wet ground is going to react differently than, say, a hard pan lie. So this is something you also have to pay attention to. Is your lie on a hard surface, or is it a soft surface? Is it sandy? Is it soily or loamy? All of this is going to have an impact on how the ball takes off, and all of this is stuff that you have to take into consideration as you're analyzing the lie of your golf ball. So first we'll talk about an ideal lie, or a good lie. What I consider an ideal lie is when the ball is sitting up on top of the grass, and the grass is thick enough where there's sort of a cushion in between the surface level of the grass and the surface level of the ground. So there's a little space in between the bottom of the ball and the ground level. When you have that cushion, it's kind of like the ball is teed up a little bit, so you have room under the ball to get under it. That's what we're considering, or what I would consider, an ideal lie, when it's sitting up and there's also a little cushion in between the bottom of the ball and the ground level. Any other type of lie is going to have a significant impact on how the ball is going to take off. If you do not have a good lie, automatically that's going to change the type of shot that you can hit and the way that you're going to approach that shot. So you have to take this into consideration. How you learn how lies affect the golf ball is only done through experience. You have to be in that situation and try different things out through practice so that you can have an understanding of how the ball takes off of that particular lie. I have played golf for many, many years now, as I've said before, and I have practiced deliberately on all manner of different lies just to have an idea of how it's going to affect the ball when I hit a particular type of shot on that particular type of lie. That way, when I'm on the course and I'm in that situation, I have a general idea of how the ball is going to take off from that type of lie. And then that gives me an idea of an understanding of what type of shot I need to hit in order to get the ball where I want it to go. So in the last video, we discussed the technique to be used in chipping to set a standard, a default, that we can then manipulate to change the type of shot that we need, or the type of shot that's desired. Today we're going to talk about those variations and what those variations are in order to get the desired result. So here I'm going to chip to this pin here. It's probably about 20 yards or so, something very, quite simple, but you see it's a little bit elevated, and I'm going to be pitching from this location here. The variations that you can take when pitching are numerous and varied. There are many different ways to pitch the ball and lots of different things that you can do to get the ball to react in a certain kind of way. Again, you really only learn this by practicing and pitching a bunch of different balls in various situations, trying different things out to see what happens as a result of you changing certain body movements. I learned golf as a child, so I had a lot of time doing this. Essentially, you have to spend time doing it so that you understand, when I move my body like this, the ball does this most of the time. When I do this, it does this. I'm going to kind of give you a general idea of what different motions produce what types of shots so you can have this and then practice them for yourself. Of course, I can't go over all of the different variations, but we'll be covering the basics. And the basics being using the bounce of the club, getting high shots, low shots, spinning shots, and very high shots or flop shots. So we'll be discussing those few shots there, and that usually is enough to get done what you want to do. Now granted, I don't try to hit specialty shots unless I have to, unless it's a necessity. I do not try to get the ball high in the air unless I have to fly it over some obstacle, over a bunker, over a bush or something of that. I try to always play the easiest, simplest shot I possibly can because that's going to be a higher percentage shot. And as we discussed before, typically that's low. The lower you can keep the ball, the more you can try to control it. So typically I try not to hit it high or hit some kind of specialty shot unless I absolutely have to. I know a lot of people play golf and they want to hit the fanciest shot possible. I don't try to hit the fancy shot unless that's my only option or unless I determine that that's the best option. I always try to hit the highest percentage, easiest shot I can possibly hit, the one that I feel very confident at hitting. And today I'm going to be pitching with my 56-degree wedge, or what I told you was my 55-degree wedge. This is my go-to pitching wedge. I will use other wedges depending, but I typically don't use any other wedge except this one to pitch because I'm very comfortable and I'm familiar with how the ball takes off with this club. I will typically use a lower lofted club, like a pitching wedge or a gap wedge, when I need the ball to take off lower and there's more room for it to roll. If the pin is in the back per se and there's lots of green to work with and I just need to fly it over the bunker, as opposed to trying to fly it all the way to the hole, I can just pick a more generous landing zone that's closer to me and then hit it with a lower lofted wedge so that it will roll to the hole and have less spin. On the other side of that, I typically reserve my lob wedge for when I have to have maximum height, maximum stopping power. I don't have a lot of green to work with, the pin is cut short, and I need the ball to stop as quickly as possible. That's when I typically use my lob wedge. Most of the time though, most of my pitches are done with my sand wedge or my gap wedge. So today I will be using my sand wedge, and I'll show you the different variations with this one club. We talked about how the balls typically take off perpendicular to the leading edge of the club, which is the bottom. But on wedge shots and pitch shots, we can open the face up some. When you open the face of the club, this will engage the bounce. So you see here, if I have forward shaft lean and there's not much bounce there, if I were to open the face of the club, now the bounce is engaged more. So it's going to hit the bottom here. So to engage the bounce of the club, all you have to do is open the club face some. You can also engage the bounce of the club by moving the shaft back. However, remember that wedges work better when you're hitting down on them, and it's difficult to hit down on it if the shaft is vertical or behind the club face. So in order to maintain a forward shaft lean and still utilize the bounce, we open the face some. And by opening the face, this enables us to have forward shaft lean and still use the bounce of the club. When you open the face up, the ball will take off slightly to the right, or if you're a left-handed golfer, to the left, but it's going to take off in the direction that you open the face. Furthermore, as you open the face, you're adding loft to the club. Notice if I rotate it all the way open, I can put the club flat on the ground and the loft is, straight up. So as you open the face, not only is the ball going to take off right, but we're also adding loft to the club, so the ball will generally take off higher. One of the most dreaded shots when pitching the ball close to the green is what's known as the chili dip, where you use your wedge and you catch it fat just behind the ball and the ground may be wet and soft and the ball just goes bloop, and it goes nowhere. This is one of the most dreaded shots. It's a very common mistake. It happens to all of us. In order to mitigate this, what you want to do is use the bounce. And the chili dip happens when you have used too little bounce and the leading edge catches the ground like this, where it's sharp, and it digs into the ground behind the ball, and then there's too much ground in between the ball and the club, and the ball just goes, the ground catches the club, it stops, and then the ball just kind of dribbles up forward maybe an inch or two or a foot. This is what's known as the chili dip, like you're scooping the ground. In order to mitigate that or eliminate that, use the bounce by opening the club face up. If you open the club face up and use the bounce, the club cannot dig. If I have the club face open like this and I take some swings and I throw the club into the ground, you'll see that it cannot dig because it's hitting the ground and bouncing up. Contrastingly, if I were to close the club face square and have a lot of forward shaft lean and then hit down on it, you can see that it grabs the ground and wants to dig. So if I were to hit that shot and the ball would have been here, that would have been a chili dip. I would have dug in behind the ground and the club gets stuck because the grass roots are too thick. The club is trying to go downward into the ground and it will not hit the ball. If I open the club face up though, and then swing like that, I can hit down as much as I want to, and the club will still bounce off the ground. It will not dig because it cannot dig if it's hitting on this part of the ground. If it digs this way, it will dig. Oftentimes, chili dips happen when you're on upslopes, because as you look here on this green, this slope is downhill now. And if your ball were here, we're hitting on an upslope. Understanding the slope is also part of determining the lie of your shot. This is hitting on an upslope. So if I were hitting into this upslope and I have a lot of forward shaft lean, my shaft is going to be working into the hill, digging down into it. This is something you have to take into consideration. So here, you may be better leaning back a little more so that your shaft is traveling with the slope as opposed to against the slope into the slope. These are things you have to take into consideration when you're pitching. So this not only is the lie how the golf ball is sitting on the ground, but the slope of the ground that the ball is sitting on is also part of the inspection process when you approach your golf ball. Chili dips, again, very often happen when we're standing on upstrokes like this and you're way up here, you're trying to stand level and straight and you play it in the back and now you have a lot of forward shaft lean and you take a swing and it gets stuck in the ground like this and then the ball just goes and goes nowhere. In order to mitigate that, you can lean back a little bit where your swing is going to be more perpendicular with or following the slope of the ground, swinging upward a little bit and opening the face up to prevent that from digging. You see here, now I can swing like this and the club is not digging into the ground. I have the face open and I'm leaning back a little bit. I'm trying to swing up with the slope as opposed to digging down into the slope. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple of shots pitching to this flag here so you can see what it looks like with me using the bounce and then not using the bounce. So the ground is wet here. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear that, but see, that's very wet. When the ground is wet like this, it's really hard to hit a good shot using the leading edge, putting the leading edge in the ground, because when the ground is wet, it's soft, and any little bit that you hit the ball fat or behind the ball will cause the club to dig into the ground even more because it's so soft. So it is very easy to hit this shot fat. When this is the situation, I almost always open the club up so I can use the bounce to hit the shot. But just for demonstration purposes, I will show you this, and it is likely that I may hit this shot fat and chunk it or chili dip it because the ground is so wet. That happened to be a good strike there. I flew it a little bit far. Now I have the club face square. We'll play it a little bit further back. You can see the flight there is a little bit lower. Now I'm not actually trying to hit it towards the target. I'm just hitting the balls here. So I am flying it a little bit far. This is so close that I would actually chip the ball from this distance because it's not that far to fly. So I'm having to hit a very small pitch swing. So ignore the fact that it's not going close to the flag. Here I'm really just trying to demonstrate to you the different shots. Now I'll show you the shot with using the bounce. I will open the club face up. Now when we open the club face up, oftentimes if you open the club face up, now you've diminished the size of which the space where you can hit the ball, and it's easy to hosel it when you open it up. In order to give you that much more space, it's very helpful when opening the club face up to drop the hands down. Dropping the hands down allows you to square the club face up a little bit more and use the bounce as opposed to having it like this. It's very hard to hit the ball like this with the club face open. So if you have the club face open, it's helpful to drop the hands down. So here I'm going to hit it with the bounce. Now because I've opened the club face up, I'm going to have to aim a little bit further to the left. The ball comes up higher. And I'm hitting these off of all of good lies. So that's a very high shot there. When you open the bounce, when you use the bounce and open the face, you can hit the ball behind the ball. You can actually hit it fat on purpose, like a bunker shot. Because when you hit it fat, it's actually going to hit the ground and then bounce upward into the ball. So you don't have to catch the ball directly as you do if you were using the leading edge. If you're using the leading edge of the club, you do really need to hit the ball first and then the ground. When you're using the bounce, you can actually hit the ground behind the ball and it will still work out okay. I'll show you here. I'll hit the ground deliberately behind the ball. You see, because it doesn't dig, it still sends the ball forward because the club hit the ground and then bounced up into the ball, and it still sent the ball towards the hole. If I were to hit it that fat with the leading edge closed with no bounce, it would dig behind the ball and duff it. The ball would probably not even get to the green. You can practice this for yourself. Utilize the bounce by opening the club up and lowering the hand some and allowing the club just to come in behind the ball. And then you can also practice your pitches with the face square, like so. And that's how we use the bounce of the club to help us. The bounce of the club enables us to hit the ground without the club face digging into the ground. Thanks to all of you that have subscribed. Be sure to check out 2 of my videos here and subscribe here if you haven't already done so, and we'll see you next week.